Hello and welcome everyone to another biology class of Fun Scholar. So today we are meeting again after the puja break and I wish you all Shubho Vijayadashami. So today we will start with the second part of the lecture from the chapter Reproduction in Animals. This chapter we had started before the onset of the puja break, and this chapter was included under CBSE Board Standard 8. And today we are going to continue the discussion from where we left. If you remember and refer to the first lecture of this chapter, you will get to know that there we had ended by understanding the male reproductive system in detail. We had looked into some videos, some simulations, and thereby we have understood how the male reproductive system works, what are the main organs and the accessory glands which help both in the synthesis, development as well as passage of the male gametes, that is sperms, from the site of reproduction to the sink, that is the outside environment or the female reproductive system. So today basically we'll start with discussing the female reproductive system. The female reproductive system, if I may say, is much more simpler as compared to the male reproductive system, because if I would like to include the complexity of the glands and the passages involved, so the female reproductive system according to me is much more simpler to understand. And here this is the first topic that we kick off with. Now, apart from female reproductive system, we are going to learn about other associated topics, that is fertilization. Since this is the chapter of reproduction, we must know about the union of male and female gametes which gives rise to zygote formation, and what is zygote and the types of fertilization, the animals undergoing those types of fertilization. Now, reproduction system apart from human beings, we will also study in some other animals such as frogs, and then we will have a look into asexual reproduction also, which takes place in some simple basic type of animals which are unicellular. And last but not the least, we will know about cloning also. We'll have the basic idea of cloning. So without any further delay, let's begin today's discussion with the topic of female reproductive system. And as you know, this is the video that we are going to watch first of all. But before going into watching this video, let's have an idea about the female reproductive system. The female reproductive system, you might know, is the system of the pair of ovaries and uterus. Then there are the fallopian tubes connecting both the ovaries with the uterus, and then the passage which includes the cervix and the vagina, which are known as the birth canal for the birth or delivery of the fully developed fetus at the end of the gestation period. So these are the basic parts of female reproductive system. The female reproductive system will include a pair of ovaries on either side. The pair of ovaries are somewhat oval in shape, and they are actually the storehouse of the ovum or the ova, which are the follicles. And as we go along with the discussion, we will now note that how the synthesis and the passage of ovum takes place, what happens if the ovum is fertilized, and what happens if it is not. Then we have a pair of oviducts, which are also called fallopian tubes, as I said, which connect the respective ovaries with the uterus, and the uterus, it is an inverted pear shaped organ, which actually is the main area where the fetus develops throughout the 9 months, with the, it is also known as the womb. It is also known as the womb. Ovaries, they are the gonads, or we can say female gonads. Just like testes, which are the male gonads. So ovaries similarly are the female gonads which produce the female gametes called ova or the eggs. So this is the overview of the female reproductive system, but how it looks about that we will know from this video. So first let's watch this video and then we'll continue the discussion.
We have taken a look at the reproductive system in males. Now, before moving on to the process of fertilization, we need to understand the place where this process takes place. Yes, I am referring to the female reproductive system. The site of ovum production, fertilization, and the uterus are all part of the female reproductive system. Let's have a look at this important system in this video. Do you remember where we began studying the male reproductive system? Yes, it was the site of sperm production. Similarly, we will begin learning from the site of production of the egg cell or simply the ovum. So the journey begins from these oval structures called the ovaries, one ovary on either side. Did you notice that the ovaries are connected to these tube-like structures? But they're not connected directly. If we look at it carefully, we find that there are finger-like projections which connect the two. These finger-like projections are very important for receiving the ovum when released from the ovaries. But do they have a scientific name? Yes, these finger-like projections are called the fimbriae. The fimbriae help to hold the ovum released and also help to sweep it to the tubes present ahead. But why does the ovum require this sweeping activity? Can't it travel on its own? No, it can't. Unlike the motile sperm, the ovum is non-motile. It cannot move until it is pushed or swept by some other cells. Now, these tube-like structures that we are referring to since a long time also have a scientific name. They are called as the fallopian tubes. And what do you think will be their importance? Let me guess. Is it that they connect the ovaries to the uterus? Yes, that is definitely one important function. But more important than this is the fact that the fallopian tubes are the site of fertilization. Yes, it is the fallopian tubes where the sperms are able to fertilize the ovum. And from here, the zygote starts dividing and grows into an embryo. Now, where will this embryo go further? Needless to say, the uterus. We know that the uterus, commonly referred to as the womb, is the site of development of a baby. And when the growth of the baby is completed, it comes out of the mother's body through the vagina. Do you know what the vagina is? It is basically a small passage that opens to the exterior. It is the site where sperms are received in the female's body. On the other hand, the same passage is used for passing the baby out of the body during childbirth. Now that you've learned both the reproductive systems, can you tell me which one is more complex than the other one? Just think for a moment. If you think it is the male reproductive system, you may be wrong. Yes, the female reproductive system is more complex. The system is designed for the complete process of fertilization as well as the growth and the development of the baby. That is the reason why it is slightly more complicated compared to the male reproductive system. This was just an overview of how the female reproductive system is. We will get to know how every organ in this system works efficiently when we understand the process of fertilization and the development process of the.
Now, one thing I would like to clear over here, they have mentioned that the female reproductive system is more complex as compared to the male reproductive system. But if you remember, before going into the video, I told you that the male reproductive system, according to me, is much more complex than the female reproductive system. This was in regards to the structural complexity, because as you can remember from the, if you go through the previous video and go through all the network of the passages that are involved over there, and then come back to watch this video, and then you will understand. And also do let me know that what do you think about both these systems, whether the male reproductive system is more complex or it is the female reproductive system. But if you consider the structural complexity, it is much more in the male reproductive system. But here they have given the complex structure or the complexity bonus to the female reproductive system in regards to the processes that take place in the female reproductive system. As they have mentioned that female reproductive system is capable to handle both the formation of gametes as well as the union of gametes and also the entire development of the fetus. But the male reproductive system is only involved in the production and passage of the male gamete, that is the sperm. So in regards to the function carried out, so you can say that the female reproductive system is much more efficient. But if you consider the structural complexity involved, then you can go ahead with the male reproductive system. So in order to avoid the confusion, whatever I had spoken and whatever told in the video, so I thought it would be better to clear out your doubts. Now moving ahead, this is the simulation of the female reproductive system. As you can see over here, these are the, first of all, this is the 3D structure. This is how it looks, right? So it is somewhat bent from side, you can see over here. This is somewhat bent like this, and these from behind you can see on either side of the uterus. This is the main uterus. This is the uterus, and on either side you can spot two ovaries, and this is the oviduct of the fallopian tube. Now I will talk about each part of the female reproductive system in detail. First, coming to the gonads, the ovaries. The ovaries, they are almond-shaped organs. So almond-shaped means almost oval, as I said, and they are so small. Just imagine almost the size of an almond. And it is responsible for producing eggs. Moreover, the second function of the ovary is to secrete hormones, namely estrogen and progesterone. These two hormones help in maintaining the cycle that takes place in the uterus and the ovary, that is the menstrual cycle, and it also helps in the production and development of the ovum from the primary follicles. And this estrogen and progesterone hormones, they are no more secreted after the last menstrual cycle, that is menopause. So these hormones start secreting right from the menarche when the menstrual cycle starts, and they last up to the menopause. Now, ovaries are the sites or the storehouse of many primary follicles which are fixed before the birth of the female child only. No more primary follicles are newly produced or stored in the ovaries of the female child after birth. So whatever number are there in each of the ovaries of the female fetus, that is fixed inside the mother's womb only. This is also another major difference, as I mentioned earlier, also with the male reproductive system, because sperms keep on getting produced, but the number of follicles that ultimately get transformed into ovum or eggs, that is fixed before the birth of the females only. Now, this ovaries, they are obviously very sensitive organs, we know, because they produce the any kind of drugs or any kind of bad habits such as alcoholism or smoking, that they can adversely affect the functioning of the ovaries, and they will have the direct detrimental impact on the menstrual cycle, on the capacity of childbearing, and even on the production of the ovum. Also, upcoming the next thing, that is the oviduct or the fallopian tube. Now, the fallopian tube has got three regions. The region which is connecting to the ovary, which has got finger-like projections, that region, the finger-like projections, they are called fimbriae, as you have known from the video. And this region which contains fimbriae, this region, as you can see, is funnel shaped, and that is why it is known as infundibulum. Then the middle region of the fallopian tube, it is known as ampulla. The middle region of fallopian tube is known as ampulla, and the last region which connects with, it is the narrow region which connects with the uterus. It is very narrow. It is known as isthmus. It is the last narrow region which will ultimately connect with the uterus. So therefore, once the ovum or egg is released, it will be collected by fimbriae of the infundibulum region, then it will travel through the ampullary region, and then by going through the isthmic region, it will enter the uterus. Now, when fertilization takes place, it takes place in the junction of ampulla and isthmus, which is known as ampullary isthmic junction. It is the site of fertilization. Is the site of fertilization, means where ampulla meets with the isthmus of the oviduct. So on a broader sense, you can say fertilization takes place in the oviduct, but if you want to give the detail, it takes place in the ampullary isthmic junction in the oviduct of the fallopian tube. Then we have got the main part, that is the uterus, because here only the full development of the fetus throughout the 9 months takes place. It is a highly muscular organ. So for the purpose of fact, it is said that the uterus can actually be 1,000 times bigger in size at the end of the term. So from its actual size, when the lady is not conceiving the child, so from that size it can be enlarged 1,000 times at the end of the 9 months or at the end of the gestation period. So now you can imagine how elastic uterus is. Now uterus has got 3 layers of muscles. Uterus, the outermost layer from outside, the outermost layer of uterus is known as perimetrium. The middle layer is known as myometrium, and the innermost layer is known as endometrium. So perimetrium is the outermost layer which is lining the organ of the uterus. Myometrium is the, we can say, the broad middle layer, and this layer has got its significance during contraction, which is necessary for expulsion of the fully developed fetus at the end of the gestation period or during the delivery. So the muscles of myometrium, they contract severely in order to expel the fetus, and the endometrium is the innermost layer which is lined with mucus. This is the innermost lining, and when the menstrual cycle takes place every month, the menstrual bleeding, so this is this endometrial lining which is shed. In each month, when there is release of ovum from the ovary, the endometrial lining is lined by the mucus, so that if there is any fertilization taking place, it is ready to accept the zygote for implantation with the uterus, and then it can actually support further development. But if no fertilization takes place, then this endometrial lining shades off as menstrual bleeding. That is why we have menstruation cycle every month. So, and then we have the lower narrow region of the uterus. It is known as the cervix. It is the cervix, and then you can see somewhat broad region. At last, it is the vagina or the birth canal, through which the baby is born. And this is also the region where the sperms or the male gametes are deposited, and then because the sperms are motile due to the presence of their tails, they can easily swim upwards towards the uterus and can then travel to either side of the fallopian tube, and if there it meets with an egg in the ampullary isthmic region, then obviously there will be conception. So this is how the entire system of the male and the female reproductive system work, and how the fertilization takes place. Ovum, we know, it is the single celled entity which is the female gamete, and it is also the largest cell in the human body, and the smallest is the sperm cell. On the contrary, uterus is the part where development of the baby takes place. that we have come to know. And like the sperm, an egg is also a single cell and it is haploid. Haploid means it is containing half the total number of chromosomes present in all the other body cells. So in case of human beings, the total number of chromosomes in all the body cells is 46. So in sperm and in ovum, the total number of chromosomes present will be 23. And when sperm and ovum will combine together through the process of fertilization, then they will again restore back this 46 number of chromosome in each body cell of the fetus. Let's have a look into this human ovum simulation. So this is how it looks. You can see this is a structure, spherical structure. There are many layers of this human ovum about which I am not discussing now at this grade. In higher class, we will get to know of different layers of the human ovum which needs to be fertilized by the sperm. This is the nucleus, the central nucleus, and the layers are present surrounding the human ovum. And the process of release of a mature ovum from either of the ovary each month is known to be ovulation. Here you can see and get some idea about the structure of the ovum. The outermost layer, it is called corona radiata. Then beneath that we have the layer of zona pellucida. Then we have got cytoplasm which is present in each and every cell, that is the jelly-like matrix of the cell, and this is obviously the nucleus which I have showed you just now in the simulation. So what happens? Earlier we have known that this acrosome of the mitochondria contains some enzymes which help in penetrating this corona radiata and zona pellucida layer and then get embedded in the cytoplasm and then completely fuse with the ovum. And when this happens, the mechanism is to ensure that no other sperm gets to fertilize the same ovum. So therefore, but still sometimes the rare events take place that two sperms fertilize the egg. So that is a rare case, but I am talking of the normal condition that it happens that when one sperm out of the millions of sperms which have got released, they reach the ovum. So only one sperm can penetrate the ovum and then fertilize it and produce the zygote. So this is the overview of the female reproductive system that we have discussed so far. Let's see about the anatomy of the female reproductive system, though we have learned that will. So this is the same thing which we have on. So if I click on here, the role played by each part will come over here. So what is the importance of the cervix? That it serves as the passage for menstrual blood, and sperm also can enter through this passage only. It also helps in childbirth by dilating. So this cervix is made up of elastic muscle that can contract and dilate the passage so that birth of the baby is made possible. And also another important thing is that the fluid from this region only is taken for pap smear test in order to ensure some anomalies or disease, the occurrence of disease such as the cancer, cervical cancer. So the rest of the things I Guess I have already made you understand, so we won't go with the repetition. Now, fertilization process. So, fertilization process is the first step where the fusion of the male gamete and female gamete takes place. In case of human beings, it is the sperm and the ovum respectively. So, as I said, only one sperm will fuse with the egg, and this is only what fertilization is. So, let's watch a video about it to have more clear idea about this process.
Among all kinds of pain that a human goes through, childbirth is generally considered to be the most severe. Yes, the pain that a female goes through is unbearable. So we have all given our mothers that intense pain while coming into this world. But have you ever wondered about how you got this life? What were the series of steps that made you grow into this structure from being a single cell? Let's have a look at this most important process that helped us gain life. Yes, I am referring to the process of fertilization. How do we define it in simplest words? Fertilization is the process in which a male gamete fuses with a female gamete, giving rise to a zygote. So, how will this process begin? When one sperm among all the others is able to penetrate the egg cell, then the egg releases certain chemicals. These chemicals make sure that no other sperm will now penetrate this egg. The first step begins now when the male nucleus from the sperm fuses with the female nucleus that is already sitting right there in the big fat egg cell. The fusion stimulates a cascade of reactions which will further give rise to several successive cell divisions. The consecutive cell divisions then give rise to an embryo that will further develop into an organism. So, is this process of fertilization the same in all the organisms? Think for a moment. In order to answer this question, we have to keep in mind two major facts. Firstly, the process of fertilization is simply the fusion of gametes. Secondly, the place where the fusion of gametes can take place may be different in various organisms. So now can we answer the question correctly? Yes. The simplest answer is that the process of fertilization will almost be the same. This is because it involves the fusion of gametes. However, the location where the fertilization occurs may be different in animals. For example, in humans, the baby grows inside the mother's body. However, have you seen babies of frogs? They're not born from inside the body of the female frogs like in our case. This gets us to the concept of types of fertilization. The first example explains that fertilization occurs inside the female's body. Hence, such a type is referred to as internal fertilization. In this case, the sperm from a male's body enters the female's reproductive tract and reach the fallopian tubes where the egg cell awaits. The fusion of both completes the fertilization process inside her body. All higher animals like mammals exhibit this type of fertilization. Now can you guess the next type? Yes, it will be the external fertilization. As the name suggests, the process will involve fusion of gametes outside the female's body. Frogs are examples belonging to this category. In this case, the unfertilized eggs are released in the water. Now the sperms from the male body will be released on these eggs and will fertilize them. As a result, the fertilization process will be accomplished in the water outside the female's body. Many aquatic animals, including fish, exhibit this type of fertilization. This is how fertilization takes place in animals. Now, the most important thing we need to know is how the embryo develops. Do watch our next video to know this important process.
So mainly from this video we have got to know about the process of fertilization and the types of fertilization about which we will discuss now. So this is the simulation where you can see that the three sperms have come near to this egg or ovum, but only one has been able to penetrate the corona radiata layer, and now this sperm will release enzymes that will block the entry of these two other sperms, and it will ensure that the nucleus of the first sperm only fuses with the nucleus of this ovum and bring about fertilization process. Now directly coming to the types of fertilization, as told in the video that internal fertilization, from the term only it is well understood that it will take place interior to the body or inside the body simply. Example, in humans, cows, dogs and hens, many other animals are there, right? So in tigers, lions, all these animals which particularly give birth to the young ones, so directly. So in the case of all these living organisms, fertilization takes place inside the body only. But for the animals who lay eggs, so for them you can say the fertilization is external to the body. So when they lay eggs, inside the eggs fertilization gets completed when the egg is after the egg is laid. Now the examples will include aquatic animals as and also the amphibians such as frog, as they have mentioned, aquatic animals such as fish, starfish. Now in all these cases you will notice that they lay a cluster of eggs which look jelly like, translucent jelly like substance, and in within that egg cluster only fertilization will take place inside each of the eggs, and after fertilization is complete, then the young ones will come out of eggs. So these are the two types of fertilization that we can observe in nature. Acha. Now the next question over here is, why do fish and frogs lay eggs in hundreds whereas a hen lays only one egg at a time? Why do you think so? Any idea? Though the answer is already given. So the answer is very obvious that the animals who lay hundreds of eggs, so they release millions of sperms, all the eggs do not get fertilized and develop into new individuals, because you know their water is the medium and there is every chance that the eggs will be washed out and only a few portion of that eggs will come out successful in developing into the young ones or the offsprings. Also, there are other animals in the pond which may feed. So, there is also the scope of predation, every scope of predation in the environment. That is why, in order to increase the chance of survival, eggs are laid in 100 so that at least some of them can develop fully to the young ones and later adult individuals. So production of large number of eggs in case of the fish or the frogs will ensure that although the majority of them are either taken up by predation or washed away by wind or water, but at least some of them can survive. I also wonder how an embryo can be the beginning of a new life. Embryo is the beginning of the new life because the embryo, after going through a series of cell division, that gives birth to all the organs and ultimately it develops into the fetus. Therefore, embryo is considered the starting point of a new individual. So the sperm over here is there and the egg is there. Both of them fuse to form the zygote. Then the zygote is a single cell. From that it undergoes mitotic cell division to form the fourth cell stage called the embryo, and then again it continues to divide. There are other names also, so just as blastocyst, morula, so that about which you will learn in higher classes. Ultimately they develop into the fetus. The fetus where given birth is the new individual or the offspring. Now, how does the development of the embryo takes place within the uterus? About that we'll watch in this video.
The journey of life begins with a single cell, but later it is no longer alone. It divides repeatedly to form a mass of many cells together. And in this video, we are going to learn about this beautiful process that helps us grow to what we are from a single cell. Yes, we will be talking about how the embryo develops. Do we have a scientific name for this process of embryo development? Absolutely. It's called the process of embryogenesis. In simplest words, embryogenesis is the process that follows fertilization. Where exactly does the fertilization take place in humans? Yes, it takes place in the fallopian tubes of the female reproductive system. However, before reaching the uterus, the embryo undergoes a series of divisions that help in its growth and development. Let us focus on one of the fallopian tubes where the egg cell has got fertilized. Now, this fertilized egg cell will divide to form two cells, followed by four, and so on. This results in the formation of a ball-like structure. This ball contains many cells inside it. Do you know what this ball of cells is referred to as? When the cell number in it is 16, then it is referred to as the morula. This further divides to form a structure called the blastula. So will it have double the number of cells in it? Blastula is just a stage where the cells arrange themselves such that they form a hollow mass structure. In fact, the cells align themselves to the ends and leave a cavity within, which gets filled with the fluid. Now, the next stage of development will be the blastocyst. It is the stage where the embryo will have cells that have got differentiated and will even differentiate further. Now, what exactly is this process of differentiation? Let me explain. Have you ever thought that if we all started our lives with a single cell, then where do all these different types of cells in our body come from? Yes, I know it's from a single cell that was present at the beginning. But how is this possible? The answer to this is the differentiation process. As the name suggests, it is the process in which one cell gets differentiated from the other cells in its vicinity. As a result, we get a whole new variety of cells from these differentiated ones after successive divisions. So coming back to the blastocyst stage, it is now a mass containing differentiated cells. As it grows further, the body of the embryo begins to develop. But for its proper growth and development, don't you think the embryo will require nutrition? Of course, yes. And where will it derive the necessary nutrition from? You may say the mother's body. That's correct, yes. But how will that be possible when the blastocyst is still moving inside the reproductive tract? It is not connected to the point from where it can derive nutrition. Hence, the blastocyst needs to be connected to that particular location. This is where the most important stage of implantation comes into the picture. Can we guess what could it be from the name itself? Yes, It is the step where the blastocyst now attaches itself inside the mother's body at one fixed position. It implants itself there. And where will this position be? Of course, inside the uterus. That is the place where the baby grows, right? So the embryo now attaches itself in the uterus. Few of the main reasons for attachment is deriving nutrition, giving away waste, and exchanging gases. This is served through this barrier that we can see here. This barrier is an organ called the placenta. So can we say that the placenta connects the baby with its mother? Absolutely. Now the embryo is all set to grow into a baby. The stage where the organs of the baby's body starts developing such that they can be identified is called as the fetal stage. And the embryo can now be called a fetus. The fetus grows in the uterus after taking the required amount of time, and when the growth is completed, the child is all set to enter this beautiful world. This is how an embryogenesis takes place in most of the animals. But wait a second. We have seen that a hen lays eggs and the chicks emerge out from these eggs. It means they do not grow in the body of their mother. Yes, development of the embryo takes place in two different ways. The parameter to categorize these types is the location of the embryo development. So how do we categorize the two types? It's simple. The first type is as we have seen in the case of humans. The fetus grows inside the mother's body. It results in the mother giving rise to the young one directly. Such a type is called the viviparity, and these organisms will be called as, yes, they're called as viviparous organisms. On the other hand, the case of hen is an example of the oviparity, and the organisms exhibiting it are called the oviparous organisms. Well, this was about the process of the embryogenesis, the development of the embryos. Do you remember external fertilization? Yes, the fertilization process which occurs outside the female's body. Fertilization in frogs is an example of this. However, we still don't know the process by which the tiny embryos develop into individual frogs. To understand this interesting process, you need to watch our next video.
Very well explained, I must say. So let's recapitulate a bit so that you get a concrete concept about this process of embryogenesis or how fetus is formed from embryo. Now, as they have told that embryo we know and genesis means formation. So the process of formation of embryo is known as embryogenesis, which mainly takes place in the fallopian tube. Now, this embryo starts from this fourth cell stage after cell division, or to be specific, fourth stage or mitotic cell division. And then, as they have mentioned and I was talking about before going into the video, that it keeps on dividing, that the equal cell division, then it forms a ball or a of mass of 16 cells, which is known as morula. Then it develops a body cavity or coelom inside it, which is filled with fluid. And then the structure where the cells will be aligned on the periphery, and in the hollow space it will be filled with the fluid. Then it is known as blastula. And after that also the cell will keep on dividing finally to form the blastocyst, where the cell's mass will be differentiated. Now the cell mass is differentiated again into three layers. The layers are termed as from outside to inside. From outside we have ectoderm. Ecto means outer side. Then we have the middle layer called the mesoderm, and the innermost layer we have the endoderm. Now from these three layers, we develop the different organs. Some organs develop from ectoderm, some organs develop from mesoderm. Now when we will study tissues, or when we have studied our tissue in the earlier class, that is 7th standard, there the definition of the tissue was that it is a cluster of cells which have got similar structure as well as similar function, and along with that there was another criterion, that is the cells of a tissue have got similar or the same origin. So the origin that they have talked about there is this origin only, that the cells of the same tissue will originate from the same layer during the blastocyst stage or the embryonic stage, from the same layer, either ectoderm or mesoderm or endoderm, and then it will keep on developing to form all the organs, so that the body is fully developed, and the period throughout which the fetus is present inside the mother's womb for development. So this period is termed as gestation period, and the process of giving birth to the fully developed fetus at the end of the gestation period is termed as parturition. Now this gestation period varies from species to species. Obviously for us human beings it is almost 9 months, and it will vary in other species. And what will happen when the implantation takes place? When implantation takes place, you can see over here that this pink color, so this organ develops, that is known as the placenta, that is the connecting bridge. This is the temporary organ which is the connecting bridge between the mother and the child or the fetus, through which nutrients, respiratory gases as well as waste are exchanged. And this is, you can see a cord which is getting connected to the navel region of the fetus, through which the waste are eliminated and nutrients are absorbed from the mother's body. So this cord traveling from the fetus to the placenta, it is the umbilical cord. This is the umbilical cord, and the placenta is formed by the chorionic villi of the fetal side and the villi on the mother's side. So both the villi join together to form the placenta. It is a disc-shaped organ. This placenta is a disc-shaped organ, and after parturition or the birth of the baby, the placenta is also expelled out of the mother's womb. And as spoken in the video that about viviparous and oviparous animals, obviously viviparous animals are those who directly give birth to the young ones. Examples are many, and oviparous are the ones who lay eggs. There, the process of embryogenesis and the process of formation of fetus from the embryo takes place within the egg only. So the egg-laying animals are called oviparous animals, and the animals that giving birth to the young ones are called viviparous animals. Now we will see about metamorphosis. What is metamorphosis?
Some of the most beautiful creations of nature are the butterflies that fly from one flower to another. They are so beautiful that they attract your attention every time. But you will be surprised to know that these pretty little creatures are not the same when they are born. Astonishingly, when they are newly hatched, they just look like any other insect or simply like a worm. Only after a few days, their body forms this beautiful structure. So are we saying that the newly born butterfly larvae don't look similar to the adult butterfly? Absolutely. The change is quite drastic. But do we find such drastic changes in human beings? No, we don't. Though our looks might change, the basic structure won't. There are a few organisms like this butterfly that exhibit a phenomenon called the metamorphosis. Now, what exactly is this process? Well, let us understand this by splitting the word. Here, meta stands for change, and morph means form, that is the physical form. So, can we say that metamorphosis is the process in which an organism undergoes change in the physical form as a part of a development? Yes. So, do humans go through the process of metamorphism? Absolutely not. The organs with which we are born only grow in size, but they do not change as we grow old. Thus, humans do not undergo metamorphosis. Which organisms do we consider for studying this process? Just like the butterflies, we have the silkworms that undergo metamorphosis. Similarly, in higher animals, frogs and salamanders also exhibit the same process. Let's take the simplest example of frogs to understand it. What will be the first step to study this? First, the process of fertilization. And do you remember which type of fertilization is found in them? Yes, it's an external fertilization. So the unfertilized eggs, when laid in water, will get fertilized by the sperms. The resulting embryos will all stay together in a collective bundle that is held together by a jelly-like fluid. The next stage is where the embryos develop into these tiny structures having a small tail. Can you guess what these structures are called? I'm sure you must have heard of them. The tadpoles. Yes, they are called the tadpoles. However, these tadpoles do not keep swimming in the water. They remain attached to some support, like a nearby plant body in the water. A few days later, these tadpoles grow, and this results in structures like external gills and then the hind legs appear. Gradually, even the forelimbs, that is the front legs appear, and the length of the tail keeps reducing. After a couple of days, the tadpole transforms into a completely different structure. Yes, it turns into a frog. But why did we say a different structure? Because if you compare the two, you will notice remarkable differences in them. And this is exactly what metamorphosis is all about. It defines the changes in the physical forms of the organisms during their development. This is how quite a few organisms change from their young to adult stage due to metamorphosis.
So they have ended with the question that what are the differences between the tadpole stage and the adult stage of frog. We will discuss them one by one. Number one, the tail which is present in the tadpole stage dissolves when the tadpole undergoes metamorphosis to form the adult frog. Then tadpoles, they breathe with the help of gills underwater, just like fish and other aquatic animals. But when it forms frog breathes with the help of lungs on land, because we know frog is an amphibian, and when it is underwater, it breathes with the help of moist skin. Also, the tadpoles have got the tails for their mobility and locomotion, but Instead of the tail, the frog has got the four limbs, especially the hind limbs are very strong and long, so for jumping purpose and for movement on land area. So there are many differences, and that is what morphosis is all about. So some structures which will not be present at the initial stage will develop, and then on the vice versa side, the some structures which were present in the initial stage will not be present in the adult life form. So this is the metamorphosis. They have talked about butterfly also, because butterfly looks completely different during the larval stage and the pupa stage when it is inside the cocoon. In the larval stage it is the caterpillar, then it starts its life with the egg stage, that is also different. So egg stage, caterpillar stage, cocoon stage, and lastly the butterfly stage. Each of these stages, they are completely different, their characteristics are also different from each other. But that is not true in case of human beings. That is why human beings are not said to go under metamorphosis. We grow and develop, but all the features which we receive from our birth remain the same from the childhood to the entire life. So that is why metamorphosis is seen in some of these animals, but not all the animals. So we'll have a look into the hormones in metamorphosis, that how it functions and plays a crucial role in metamorphosis. So here eggs are being laid because it undergoes a external fertilization. Thyroxine hormone drives the transition from tadpole to adult stage. This is very important point to note. We know in human beings also thyroxine is involved in the metabolism process, and for frogs thyroxine helps in the transition process from the tadpole stage to adult frog stage. This is the embryo after being fertilized with the sperm. This is the early tadpole stage where it does not have limbs, only the body and the tail. The later tadpole stage where it has developed the hind limbs. Then the froglet stage where the four limbs have got developed along with the tail. And finally, the baby frog is known as the froglet stage, and finally the adult frog stage. So here you can see the look of each stage is completely different from one another. This was all about the sexual reproduction in the animals. So now we will keep the video to this only. In the last part of the lecture, we will discuss about asexual mode of reproduction, and there we will know about some of the simple methods like fission, binary fission, multiple fission, budding, fragmentation, and then we will know about the cloning process, and we will know about Dolly the sheep who was cloned, and after that we will wrap up the chapter. So this is all about the second part. Thank you so much for connecting with us. Should you have any doubt, please get connected with the Fun Scholar Academy. We are always here to help you out. And today I, Shushmita ma'am, am signing out. Take care and bye bye till we meet the next time.